introduction, and then we're gonna have the conversation with Mike Leach and just go from there.
All right. Well, that sounds good.
All right, go ahead, Arthur.
All right. Good morning and welcome to the specialist episode of the Black Dog Sports Podcast thus far. I'm here with our co-hosts, Jeremiah Short and Derek Thomas. And normally, this would be the part where I would let them speak, but we have a very, very special guest. Oh my God, I cannot believe it. I've been watching this guy since Texas Tech, Mike Leach. Mike Leach, go ahead and speak to the people. I know they want to hear from you.
Hey, I appreciate your having me on. I'm honored to be on your show, and shoot, I mean, I appreciate that you watched our games. If you think of any better stuff to call, let me know, and maybe we'll call it.
Uh-oh, that would be awesome. I'm Derek, of course. I'm Tyrone Keys' mentee, and I didn't know Arthur was such a big fan of Texas Tech. So now you of your work. So you now have two Mississippi State Bulldog fans who have followed you since your days at Texas Tech. Actually, I remember when you were the offensive coordinator at Kentucky. So and then of course Oklahoma. So like having a coach of your stature and caliber be our head coach, I know we are very excited to have you, and I know you can't wait to get rolling. So we have questions for you, and of course, anything you want to discuss and talk about, feel free. I mean, this is a candid conversation with our head coach of the Mississippi State Bulldogs, Mike Leach. So, Arthur, take it away.
All right. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about was the process of you getting hired to Mississippi State, and not only how that transpired, but we've heard your name attached to many jobs over the years. Why Mississippi State?
Well, it was a strange process. It was very sudden. We'd wrapped up the bowl game, and I'm kind of between houses. I got a little bungalow in Florida, and so I came there, and then and I'm kind of decompressing and just sort of recovering from the season, and then got a call from Mississippi State and said they wanted to come talk to me, and so they flew down one day and we had a good conversation. They flew back, said we'll call you tomorrow. They never called me the next day, and I figured, well, that's the end of that. And then the following day, they said we're going to fly down and try to stay as long as it takes to hire you. And so, we talked most of the day, and then the following day flew to Starkville, and on the plane I got a few lessons on shaking the cowbell, and I still need to practice, but I gave it a good effort coming off the plane, and I'm really honored to be at Mississippi State. I loved Washington State, had a great time at Washington State. The biggest thing is there's so many things in life that to experience that you don't have a chance to experience all of it, but you want to experience as much as you can. And I've always loved the tradition of the state of Mississippi, their commitment to football, and it starts high school football and the junior colleges there, and great job that they do. And then over the years, I'd get in arguments with people what state has the best football, and then I'd throw out Mississippi. I mean, I'd say Mississippi does, and then who's the best running back of all time? Well, he's from Mississippi. Walter Payton. Who's the best receiver of all time? Jerry Rice. He's from Mississippi. And then there's several offensive linemen, but I would always say Jackie Slater. And then at the time when when I, was in the middle of it, who's the best quarterback in the league right now? Brett Favre. Then they said, well, what about special teams? I said, well, who's the best punter of all time? Ray Guy. Oh, and I also threw Archie Manning in at quarterback too. And then, well, how about defensive players? I said, defensive linemen. I said that would take me 2 weeks to research all the defensive linemen from the great state of Mississippi that have impacted football. And after that, that was pretty much the end of the discussion. And then later on, I looked up, you can look on the net, and, and it changes a little bit over the years. But per capita players in the NFL, Mississippi usually has that distinction, the highest per capita.
Yes, indeed. So this is Derek Thomas. Since we're thankful that you think we have some of the greatest football in the nation. We think the same as well, even though we're a small state. Being that now you are the head coach of Mississippi State in Starkville, Mississippi, you had the pleasure of resurrecting, I'm going to say not basically helping make the NFL career of a native Mississippian, and that is Gardner Minshew. I have followed Gardner Minshew ever since he first became the starting quarterback at Brandon High. And a lot of people wanted him to come to Mississippi State when he was coming out of high school. But, of course, our former head coach liked mobile quarterbacks, and Gardner's strength was not his mobility. He was a well-traveled quarterback. I think he started at Troy, then he went to JUCO, then he went to Akron, I think. And then there were talks about him going to be the backup at Alabama. And then when I saw that he was going to Washington State, I said, oh, he's about to light it up. Boy, did he light it up. So talk about your recruitment of Gardner Minshew. And then when you did accept the job at Mississippi State, was he one of the first people that you talked about with a call to say, hey, I'm coming to your home state to be the head football coach of Mississippi State?
Well, Gardner's early career I wasn't real familiar with, but we didn't have a guy that had started coming back, and nobody had started, and then plus we were short on quarterback, so we were looking for a quarterback, and then and I don't recall for sure if Gardner reached out to us first or we reached out to him, but you have an idea of who's on. Who's transferring, that sort of thing. And then, and Gardner was at East Carolina at the time where he played, about half the game. And then we really liked the way he looked, and we really liked the way he played because he did a really good job of elevating the players around him. And then as we're sorting it out, then he committed to Alabama. And then, but Alabama already had a quarterback and started some. And then, we needed a guy, and we didn't have anybody that had started. And plus we threw it a lot, and, which fit Gardner, I thought. And so, well, we called him up and I said, do you want to hold a clipboard on the sideline at Alabama, or you want to lead the nation in passing? And they came all the way up there to Washington State, checked it out. And then it was a tight battle as far as who was the starter. There were three guys that, and it was neck and neck, and it was a Gardner and a guy named Anthony Gordon, who last year led the nation in passing, and Trey Tinsley, who's now coaching with us at Mississippi State. And it was neck and neck between those three. And then, Gardner had experience and brought a little extra energy, even though he wasn't quite as familiar with our offense, and transitioned really well, and we won 11 games. And I think Gardner was a huge part of that. And Gardner had a certain amount of energy that can elevate the defensive side too, just kind of a charisma to him. And that's what, good quarterbacks have. And then, speaking of Mississippi State, you see that out of Dak Prescott on Sundays. And then, and Gardner and I would talk about Mississippi, and I'd recruited through Mississippi and around Mississippi and things like that. And it had, a couple players and things. And so then, Juan, there was no indication really that Mississippi State was looking for a coach. And so it really happened very suddenly. But but we would, talk about in those quarterback meetings as you sit with one another for hour upon hour, you talk about, nearly everything. And then, but just talking about his path, and he had a path with a lot of turns in it, a lot of schools, a lot of frustration, a lot of things he went through to get to where he was. And then son of a gun, now he's the starting quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, so I'm very proud of him.
All right, Coach Jeremiah Short here. I had a question kind of piggybacking on what you were talking about with quarterbacks. You've spoken before in the past about you value quarterbacks with accuracy, and you don't really even care because how often do you throw 50 yards? So you're not even concerned with a quarterback with a big arm. So first, talk about kind of like your philosophy on the type of quarterbacks that you recruit. And then at the same time, speak a little bit about Keaton Thompson and Garrett Schrader, two players that have been heavily talked about amongst the Mississippi State fan base. Both players have kind of struggled with accuracy. And talk about how you're going to develop those guys so they kind of can fit into what you're trying to do as a coach.
The biggest thing, you try to get the very best you can in several categories for a quarterback. The single biggest thing, which is hard to gauge and it's hard to measure, and that's why with quarterbacks you see them come from all different classifications of football, is do they elevate the offensive unit? Do they make the players around them better? And then, but to effectively do that, you have to be accurate and you have to make good decisions. And I think that's where it starts. And you can coach good decisions and you can enhance accuracy. I don't think you can just flat out create accuracy from nothing, because at some point, by the time they get there, they either have some level of accuracy or they don't. And then, you'd like a guy with a strong arm. And you'd like quick feet, which is different than fast. I guess, quick feet's a guy that really has good pocket presence and can stay out of harm's way. Fast is, like a guy that can just flat out, run and is a fast person. And, and on a broken play. And if you go through the NFL, and all the greats of the past, almost none of them had every one of those things. Almost none of them had every one. The closest that I've maybe seen in my lifetime might be Patrick Mahomes, as far as having all those things. And but the biggest thing is can you elevate the offense, and you got to be accurate as far as Keaton and Garrett. It's tough to say because we didn't have a chance to work together. We haven't had spring ball, and that was the biggest thing. And so the week after spring break, we were going to start spring football, and then all of a sudden, the virus hit, and it was all right. Don't come back to campus from spring break for another week, and then it was don't come back until April 1st, and then April 15th, and April 30th. So, that's one of the things that I think we're really anxious about, is the opportunity to work with not just those two guys, but the whole team, and see who can do what, and who's and our whole team together, because one of the most important things with spring is evaluation and seeing what your resources are, and then of course in our case, since new staff and everything, installing all your plays and those sort of things.
All right, so that segues perfectly into the next topic that we wanted to talk about, which is the fact that we're not getting to do spring training right now, and how the coronavirus is affecting what you're able to do in terms of preparing the team for this upcoming season.
Yeah, it's tough. We use iPads. We're able to meet with them some. With the meeting, there's kind of an art to tell them enough that they can work on their own and get better. But when it comes to kind of installation scheme, you want it close together when you actually get to, work with them as coaches and as a unit, because, what a quarterback does is affected by, for example, what the line does, what the running back does, what the receivers are doing, and how you blend it all simultaneously. And then another critical step was, just getting to know our team, just becoming familiar with them, because the NCAA restricts how much contact you can have in the off season. It's very limited. And I think that we got plenty of work to do when this thing clears up and we have the opportunity to do it.
All right. So the next question that I had was about the air raid system, and we know that you pass the ball around a lot. And how does a running back like Kylin Hill figure to factor into your offense next season?
Well, our running backs in a lot of cases have led the various conferences in all-purpose yards. And, when it comes to yards from scrimmage, we would like our running back position to have that distinction. And obviously, the running back's the easiest guy to get the ball to, because he's the closest to the quarterback. And so you want to rush for as many yards as you can, but don't forget that you can throw it to him. And throwing it to a guy like Kylin Hill or a quality running back on space and letting them run with it after they catch it. I mean, you think they're good at the line of scrimmage, give them a little more space if you're able to carve it out, and then they can really go, And so, our running back last year at Washington State, he had the most yards from scrimmage in the Pac-12, and we hope to keep that going. And there's a lot of good running backs in this league, and that's that's obviously tough to do, but that's why everybody's in this business, whether you're a player or a coach, and that's why people watch, embrace challenges.
All right, Coach. My question. This is Derek here. Now, when we first got hired you as the head coach, I went and did some research on how you spread the ball around. And of course, with me watching your teams over the years, you spread the ball around. I mean, even those teams, you have players with 1,000 yards of receiving. I think was that 2007. I have to go back and look, but it was one Texas Tech team. You had 2,000-yard receivers, 2 700-yard receivers. Your running backs, 2 running backs had over 700 yards rushing, and then those 2 running backs had over 500 yards receiving. Talk about how you plan to make our offense explosive, because when you look at our offense the past couple of years, I don't think we've ever had 2 wide receivers with 1,000 yards in a season. We definitely haven't had the offensive numbers spread around like your teams have had. So just talk about how you plan to get the most out of the offensive skill positions you have, whereas historically at Mississippi State, we have not had those type of performances from our team as a whole.
Well, you try to get the most out of your skill players. You try to, your resources are all the skill positions in the space of the field. Those are the resources you have, and you try to utilize both of those things. And a lot of our philosophy as far as space and making sure that every skill position touches the ball came from the wishbone. And interestingly enough, the father of the wishbone, Emory Ballard, was one time the head coach of Mississippi State. And I had the pleasure of meeting him several times before he passed away. But, and then, when I was at Oklahoma, I was able to, talk football with Coach Switzer a lot. And of course, he loved the wishbone. And, and what the wishbone gives you distribution. Every skill position touches the ball. And then the other thing is the wishbone is a better offense downfield than it gets credit for, because you can either hand or fake it to the fullback. then the quarterback attacks the edge, and then the quarterback can pitch it. Some of those pitches happen downfield too. And so the idea was to attack the whole field, and then to attack the whole field and to get it in every skilled player's hands. And you know, and it still evolves. I mean, you're still constantly trying to figure out other ways to, you know, get people the ball. I coached Michael Crabtree and Wes Welker. I mean, those were two quality players. So you try to figure out how to, you know, ways to get them the ball and you know, feature what they do well. But in between, you also want a distribution to the other players so they just can't tee off on them. And then the other thing, if you hit all the other skill positions, you can cover more space on the field, spread the defense out, and make them cover more ground. And then the other thing, put them in a bind as they try to transition between, you know, the combination of routes you might run or the runs or the screens. And so, yeah, we're constantly, I guess if you were to say, you know, what do you try to do the most? The first thing would be we try to practice with precision so we can really teach the skills that we want to get taught. Okay, the second thing would be how do we get the ball to every skill position and attack the whole field? Because if, like, for example, if a position, you might have one position that's got, say, 1,300 yards receiving. Well, if another position only has like 300, well, there's a problem, because right there's kind of a leak in the boat. You know, you're not utilizing that position, and you got to sort out why. Sometimes it means move somebody there. Sometimes it's some unfortunate thing where, you know, a couple of guys have gotten injured or something. Sometimes it's an idiosyncrasy of the quarterback. Sometimes it's a failure on, you know, the plays we're calling. And so, you know, you want to try to address it so that, you know, the defense is accountable for that space and that position.
Hi, Coach Jeremiah Short here. The question I had is, speaking of kind of the attacking style of the spread, how will you shift a school like Mississippi State, which traditionally, even though we've run the spread option the last really 10, 11 years, or the RPO the last 2 years, Moorhead, how will you shift it from more of a conservative running style team, which it still has been even when they ran the spread option, and traditionally really throughout their entire history, to an attacking style football where you're throwing the ball possibly 50, 60 times a game, regularly, not maybe every once in a while. It's not just throwing the ball 50 times a game, but how do you shift their mindset when it comes to that?
Well, a lot of practice, you know, practice. The most important thing you do is practice, I've always thought. And the most important thing you do is practice. And as a coach, you try to make your drills and your communication as precise as you possibly can so that they can constantly duplicate their skills. And so then it becomes second nature. And, you know, that's the thing, is you just got to get together and practice. Now, the other thing is there's definitely an appeal to it. So, and it does have a tendency to motivate guys to, you know, want to be involved with it, because it's explosive and a lot of people touch the ball, and that's exciting for everybody. And, you know, like even the offensive lineman, nobody likes to score more than an offensive lineman. Offensive linemen quietly or as a group taking credit for every time you score, and they deserve to.
Right.
Have you seen an uptick in interest from quarterbacks? Obviously, I know you can't discuss particular player names when it comes to recruitment, but the fact that you're not saying that Washington State or Texas Tech, one high-profile teams, but obviously Mississippi State is in the SEC. Have you seen more of an uptick in interest from receivers and quarterbacks being at Mississippi State?
Yeah, I think we have. It's a little hard to gauge. Because I don't know exactly what it was before. I mean, I kind of have a sense, but I think there is, because we've had a really good reception with receivers and quarterbacks.
All right.
Arthur.
So, Okay, so I have a question about the last time that you were coaching in the SEC was at Kentucky in around '98, and so my question is the SEC has become a bit more dominant in the college football landscape. So how have things changed in the SEC from your viewpoint, from when you were last at Kentucky to now in 2020?
Well, okay, so it was similar from the standpoint that it was the dominant conference. No question about that. Okay. It was the dominant conference, but the SEC East was the dominant division in the conference. I mean, that was back in the era where, oh man, think of the quarterbacks they had. They had, obviously, we had Tim Couch at Kentucky. You had Danny Warfel at Florida. You had Peyton Manning at Tennessee. You had Quincy Carter at Georgia. And so there was a time where nobody thought anybody would ever win anything other than the SEC East. And then then over time, I go to the Big 12, and then the power of the conference shifted. Well, then there were some down years in the middle, and then in the meantime, the power shifted to the West. Where now it's like the SEC East was. Nobody thinks anybody outside of the SEC West can win anything. I think things go in cycles a little bit. Back when I was in the conference, and it wasn't just because of us at Kentucky, although we probably influenced it a little bit. The SEC in general was throwing the ball a little more. Like LSU threw it this year. And but there were several teams that were. We were at Kentucky, Florida was, obviously Tennessee was, and then Georgia was throwing it quite a lot too. Then and then, we played. We played mostly the Eastern teams, and I'm trying to think. Arkansas was throwing it some. Because we didn't play all of them in the West, we did play Mississippi State. We played Mississippi State the year that they won they won the West. So that was the first year at Kentucky was my first exposure to Mississippi State, the famous locker room, and the cowbells, and just a great game day environment. And then the next year and it was a very close game. We lost in a close game at Kentucky. Back then I was on Kentucky's side. And then we got them in Lexington. But the thing is the next year, that was a great season. Mississippi State had a great season and played in the SEC championship that year.
All right, so I had one question. You mentioned the locker room, and do you have any plans on returning the visiting locker room to its former glory?
Well, they got offices in there now, so we'd have to move some desks around, it sounds like. Now the locker room, I hear it's actually a nice visitor's locker room, and it's just below it, and they've kind of remodeled some things. But no, that locker room was iconic, and it was funny because as I've come to Mississippi State, and as I've mentioned it to people, former players and in some cases former coaches are what? I never realized that. And I guess I just assumed that everybody knew what that locker room was like. But then I got to thinking about it. With rare exception, I've never known what the visitors' locker room was like at the various places I coached when I was there, because you never go to the visitors' locker room.
All right, Coach, this is Jeremiah Short here. I don't want to switch field too much from football, but I'm going to stick with fictional football. There's a popular show back when even I was a little younger, well, not that much younger, Friday Night Lights, and you made an appearance on there in season 4. I don't know if you were a fan of the show before you made that appearance, but do you feel like that show kind of captures kind of the spirit of what Texas football is?
I've always wanted to watch the entire series. And I saw the episode that I was on, and I've seen a few episodes, but the thing is it's and even non-football people really like that show, and because I think it talked about people and their relationships, and whether in the context of football or not, you had the whole kind of journey of things. And I'm real familiar with Odessa, Texas. I'm real familiar with Odessa Permian High School and the history there. And that is a fascinating, unique place and a unique situation. And, but I'd like to watch the series in the entirety. But getting them all together, they go on, move on. And I was in the finale of season 4. They go on to the next season, and then you don't want to be left out and know what you miss. And it is on my bucket list to watch every episode in succession, one to the next. And I know the director, who's a fantastic guy. He's really got a good sense of football. Yeah, Peter Berg. And then and I think the best football movie, is, and football's hard to make movies out of. The best sports movies are baseball movies and boxing movies. And the reason is just because, you can, there's stop time. There's stop in between where you can illustrate the story. With football, you got a bunch of guys in helmets moving real fast. And so keeping track of the characters can be challenging. But I think the best football movie is Peter Berg's Friday Night Lights.
In that particular episode, you talked a lot about, people talk a lot about your pirate philosophy. And you told Coach Eric Taylor that he needed to swing his sword. And I found this interesting quote from you. It talks about how pirates function as a team. And there were a lot of casting classes in England at the time, or why you like the pirates. But with pirates, it didn't matter if you were black, white, rich, or poor. The object was to get a treasure. If the captain did a bad job, you could just overthrow him. So why does kind of speak to why you love pirates?
Well, some of that's a little overstated, the love, because I used to talk to the team about all kinds of things, and it varied. It'd be everything from grizzly bears to wolves to World War II to, just a lot of different things, or explorers, or that type of deal. And so I'd given the team a speech on pirates, and covered, really all the material you said there, and it was a unique time in history, because countries were far more divided, and not only were various cultures and races not particularly mixed, but rich people didn't spend time with middle class or poor people, and vice versa, And so everything was very institutionalized. And then once they went to the New World, it didn't matter whether, you were one of the Native Americans or, the French with the English with the Spanish, whoever teamed up. I mean, it was, here we go, And then, so it really was one of, kind of an early melting pot of people working together on the same page. There's a guy, there's actually two of them, legendary Key West pirate, Black Caesar, and there's not a lot written on him. Okay. And so Black Caesar was a former slave that got into the pirate business, and and was real formidable. And the portion I've heard about is in the Keys, and then and the first Black Caesar was so legendary and successful, and kind of just his name struck fear in everybody's minds. And well, then another guy, similar situation, years later comes back and he calls himself Black Caesar too, just because of the legend of the first Black Caesar. So anyway, I give a speech to the team, and I've got a real sword, and I'm swinging this sword around, and it's like a museum replica of a pirate sword. So it's steel and all that, made by the people that do the West Point swords. And so I'm swinging it around in the room. I'm saying, how are you going to swing your sword? And then are you going to duck your head and be all timid? And even though you got a sword, you can't defend yourself. Or are you going to be reckless and have bad technique? Maybe you get the first guy, but then the others get you. And in football, your body's your sword, and you keep it sharp and condition it in the weight room, doing the drills, the nutrition, and when there's a game or a play, that's when you swing your sword. How are you going to swing your sword? And and I think a portion of it had to do with I had an actual sword. But in any case, Michael Lewis, who's a famous writer, he wrote The Big Short, he wrote Moneyball, he wrote Blindside, came and did an article on our team and stayed for a week, and he published his article in New York Times Magazine, which goes worldwide. And when he interviewed some of the players, they talked about the speech, the pirate speech. And so then once people read that in the article, that pirate thing took off. I mean, it just took all of a sudden, because you don't have any control over the nicknames you get, you don't have any control over what nicknames they attach to you. I mean, you just got to roll with it. But when that article came out, there were pirate flags. And you get good gear. The pirate thing, you get pretty good gear. I mean, people sent me books, flags, hats, shirts. Bobby Knight and Pat Knight, who were coaching basketball at Tech at the time, gave me that Pirates of the Caribbean looking skeleton that's 6 feet tall that you push the button and he talks, and the fans had fun with it. They'd play pirate music, and at the time we were the Red Raiders, so that kind of fit a little bit, even though there wasn't an ocean within 1,000 miles. It was a good deal, and it's stuck. It's one of those things that's stuck, and really, Michael Lewis's article is what made that happen as much as anything.
Coach, this is Derek. Speaking, you talking about Pirates. When you were announced as our head coach, our fan base went crazy. Kind of merging the Bulldog culture with the pirate culture as far as dressing Bully up like a pirate, making cowbells with pirate handles. And of course, pirates are kind of in individuals who kind of have a different personality than most people. And you're a football coach that has a different personality than most football coaches. So why don't you let our fans know about Mike Leach, the man, and your personality, and how that's going to bring us to the forefront of the SEC where we want to be, because we don't want to be behind LSU and Alabama anymore. Even though there was one time we went to #1 in 2014, how are you going to bring us to the next phase as far as bringing your personality, Mike Leach the man, Mike Leach the football coach, to the Mississippi State brand of football?
I think the biggest thing is do the best you can. Just constantly, because what you accomplish together as a team, I mean, that's what's important. And our #1 goal and our motto is always be a team. It's like what everybody does together. I mean, that's what makes you a team, and all the different individuals involved doing their best every day. I think that's what's most important. John Wooden the basketball coach for UCLA used to talk about make each day your masterpiece. And then I think that as everybody's, working hard together, because working hard becomes consuming, and there's no great accomplishment without a certain amount of sacrifice. I mean, you can't accomplish great things without sacrifice, and it's not fulfilling if it's not challenging, And so I think that everybody embracing that challenge together and being tight as a unit, I think is the most important thing. And so that's the thing. Everybody's got, something to offer the team effort. And you may be a walk-on scout team player, or you may be an All-American, but all those roles are tough. I mean, everybody talks about a car. They talk about the engine of a car. Well, go take the lug nuts off of one of your tires and go drive your car with that great engine you have in it and see how far you get. You know what I mean? And so I think everything working together is what's key.
All right, Coach. This is Arthur Hosey again. I wanted to ask you, have you seen the Netflix series Tiger King? And if so, what thoughts do you have, including, did Carole Baskin do it?
Well, okay. So I saw Tiger King pretty early on. And heard about it relatively early from another guy, and so watched it. And it doesn't take long to watch it, and I recommend everybody watch it. And it's like, Tiger King's almost a sensory overload, because there's one unbelievable thing after the next. And I mean unbelievable to the point that if it wasn't real and nonfiction, you'd have to back off at some things to make it believable. Say if you made just a regular movie out of it or something. And there's so many different characters and stuff that blends together. And it's kind of one train wreck after the next. I recommend everybody watch it. And then, of course, Carole Baskin. Well, and I understand she's lost two husbands. Two husbands killed, I guess. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence. That she did, and I'm not really big on condemning somebody until they're proven guilty, although she's not a very likable character. I don't, of all the people who enjoyed watching Tiger King, I don't think that Carole's exactly anybody's favorite character. But the one thing that I found interesting was that attorney seemed awfully evasive when it came to asking him about what happened to Carole's husband.
I think she fed him to the tiger. That's my opinion.
Well, that's what the Joe Exotic thinks. Remember, how about the song?
Kitty,
okay,
kitty.
one of the wildest songs is when he sings "Here, Kitty, Kitty" and does the video.
So, Coach Leach, if you were, since you do have a law degree, as a lawyer, would you take her case?
Carole's or
Carole? Well, I guess
the prosecutor.
I guess it would be, if you're the prosecutor, would you try to prosecute that case?
Yeah, I would. And then let the jury decide. But I'd have to see all the evidence too. You see a reality show like that. And there could certainly be some things left out, or something. But I'll tell you what, their story is all over the place, isn't it? I mean, it's it bounces all over, and then through time, one thing said, then another thing said, and then, well, maybe it was this, maybe it was that, and then, just kind of a lot of, there's a lot of loose ends there.
Yeah, since we're on your law degree, and when I read this about you, because I was shocked when I read this about you, because no one would think that someone who went to law school would end up being a football coach. First off, what made you decide to switch from being a lawyer to being a football coach? and how do you feel like your law degree helps you in your preparation as a football coach?
I was always interested in coaching. I was always interested in coaching and like coaching. I started coaching baseball when I was 15. I had my own team when I was 15, coached ages 15 through my sophomore year in college, and kind of got the coaching bug there. So, each summer from school, I'd come home and I'd have a job, but I'd also have a baseball team. But I was more of a football guy. I was playing football all through high school. If you're playing on your own team, you can't go coach another football team. And then, so that was, so football was off the table if you're a high school kid, and then with me at college in the fall, I wasn't able to coach football there either, but I always thought most about football. And then, and I went straight to law school. And so I was one of the youngest guys in the law school. Me and this guy from Michigan State, we were the youngest guys there. And as I'm getting about halfway through law school, I'm thinking, and I was broke. I didn't have any money. And so, so I couldn't afford to, go to Europe and find myself or travel around or do something different. So, but I wanted to get coaching out of my system, and I figured I'd coach a year, 3 years at the most, and get it out of my system, and then go back and be an attorney. But 1 year led to the next, led to the next, led to the next,
Right.
And so I've been coaching ever since.
Okay, and Coach, before we let you get out of here, one of the, I guess you can say, traditions that us Mississippi State fans learned about when you became our head coach is the Leach Beach. So why don't you tell us how the Leach Beach got started and what's the purpose of the Leach Beach?
I got to be honest with you. There's that kind of started. That has roots in Mississippi too. I'll tell you what happened. Benny Wiley, who was my strength coach at Texas Tech, who is the strength coach at Oklahoma now. We had a run of ankle sprains, like these, not broken ankles, but ankle sprains where, just all these guys out from ankle sprains. And then we started trying to figure out what we could do better, or if there's something we could do conditioning wise to adjust to help it. And I just seen a special on Walter Payton, and Walter Payton talked about running in riverbeds and creek beds in the sand, where he grew up, as he would work and condition, and the value of running in the sand. And because, he went through his career, he never missed a game because of injury. Think about that, how long his career was. Never missed a game because of injury. I mean, that's utterly unbelievable. And so he had a good base of strength and, collateral muscles and all those things. And then in Chicago, which Chicago's flat, but he built a hill to run up and down that hill, and that became quite famous. And in Lubbock, we didn't have the resources to build a hill. So Benny and I got to talking, and he did some research on the computer, and we looked at running in the sand and, and the benefits of it. And so we built a sand pit. The sand pit was 10 yards by 40 yards. It's bigger at Mississippi State, but we built a sand pit. And so they would do sprints and agilities in the sand pit. And like, for example, like the L drill, the T drill, the change of direction stuff, we'd do it in the sand pit. In the off season, like in the summer and stuff, and we do it on Tuesdays. And our ankle injuries nosedived. I mean, we almost never had ankle injuries, and both of us credit it to the work in the sand, because you build those extra muscle. It's not just straight ahead movements. There's resistance from all sides. And we attributed that to really making us stronger, quicker at coming out of our cuts, and faster. And then, and then Wednesday's a lighter day, and then Thursday, those guys feel like they can fly after running in the sand. Even the slow guys think they're fast on Thursday after running in the sand on Tuesday.
All right, Coach. So this is Arthur Hose again. We really, really, really appreciate you coming on to the show and talking a little old us. Big fan of your work. We're looking forward to you doing great things, but we want to know if you have any last thing to let Bulldog Nation know that they can look forward to going into the season.
Well, I think we're all anxious to get started, and we're all thrilled to, get together and go to work. And so, but it's been an honor to be on with you guys, and I look forward to doing it again anytime.
All right. So that brings us to the end of this very special episode of From the Dog's Mouth with Coach Leach. And Jeremiah, you got anything that you want to say before we leave out?
Oh man, it's just been an honor to have Coach Leach. I mean, little old us to be able to have Coach Leach on our show, and it was an insightful interview. Learned a little bit about Joe Exotic and the Tiger King. I might force myself to watch it now, and then learn a little bit about the air raid. So I just want to thank Coach Leach again for coming on the show.
Oh yeah, you've got to watch the Tiger King, and there's no little old us. There's never any little old us. I mean, everybody can learn something from everybody.
I love the philosophy.
And Coach, I want to thank you for also coming. I want to thank Tyrone Keys for putting this together for us. And also, we want to leave you an open invite. And anytime you want to talk Bulldog football or got anything on your mind, man, feel free. Let us know. You have my phone number. You have my email address. We will never tell you no. Because
well, I'm excited to be on, and also Tyrone Keys mentored Ricky Saylor, who played for me at Texas Tech, and so indirectly through Ricky's relationship with Tyrone, he brought us together, and then of course Tyrone brought Derek and I together.
Yes, sir. And anytime you want to call and talk football, because we didn't we didn't really get any stories. So the next interview, we're gonna want to break the ice and just talk about all the stories that you have, all the experiences that you've gone through in your football coaching career. Because did y'all ask about Hal Mummy?
No, we did not ask about Hal Mummy.
We're going to save that for the next show because, of course, Coach Mummy has also been in Mississippi, and we know that you two men are basically the fathers of the air raid. So, again, we want to thank you and can't wait to see this offense in action. I can't wait till we have a quarterback that plays to the Mike Leach standard, which means leading the nation in passing, because I don't think we've ever had that happen, right, guys?
I think
we've ever had that happen. So I can't wait for it to happen. I'm excited about it, and we're just ready to roll.
Well, it's great talking to you guys. Look forward to talking again.
All right.
Yes,
Thank you, Coach.
Have a good day, Coach.
All right, you too.
So normally this would be the part where I say praise the Lord and go Dogs, but it turns out that Vic Schaefer does not want us anymore. So I guess this is the part where
he went home. You can't blame a man for wanting to go home.
Man, look, we can have a whole other podcast about Vic Schaefer's treachery.
Because we got Toya. LaToya wants to come on and talk about that. So we got to get that together.
And we need to get Jamont Gordon on for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So like I say, since we cannot talk, since I can't say praise the Lord and go Dogs, I'm going to end this by saying, okay, bye.
And